Welcome back to the Futurist New Deal podcast, and also the recordings for the companion piece to the Transhumanist Handbook. I'm very lucky to have Didier Coeurnelle, a contributor to this book, a life extensionist with an incredible resume, and it's very difficult to describe all of his accomplishments in a short time. But he has worked with the SENS Foundation. He has worked with the Lifeboat Foundation. He is a member of so many important organizations to us as life extensionists. And he's going to give us some background on his writing in the book and his chapter, which is titled "How to Organize a Moonshot." And I think the longer subtitle he will explain to us that how to organize a moonshot project for Amortality, scientific, political, social, and ethical questions. Didier, it's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for doing this. Tell us about your chapter.
First, I'm not a scientist. I studied law many years ago. And since now more than 10 years, I passionated for all these questions for longevity. Like you say, I'm active in many fields around longevity, but we are still a very, very small group. And my chapter is to try to push people and to explain to people how it could be possible to have a global project. So, and many of us know that each day there are about 110,000 people who die of diseases related to old age. We also know that at the moment, it's the cause number one of mortality, not only in rich countries, but also in the rest of the world. So it really should be a global project to have medical progress, to medical research, to slow down and even maybe to stop aging. And this is very difficult. This is very difficult because people don't understand the situation. This is very difficult because people don't want to think about aging. So you know that in the history of the humanity, there were already a few global projects, like the first man going to the moon. Well, that was let's say something between USSR and the US, but it was also a global project to go in the space.
Sure.
And so we should have a way to make it a global project here also, that if the people begin to understand that it's possible to slow down aging, and it is possible, and if people begin to understand that this is the first cause of mortality, and that we progress so fast in so many places, and that, for example, the use of artificial intelligence could be very useful for this. Well, I think a moonshot project for longevity is not something impossible. And if we all work together, in 15 to 20 years, we could have a solution to really already that the old people in our societies could live much longer and healthier lives.
Very nice, very nice. And candidates from longevity parties and longevity advancing parties have garnered thousands or tens of thousands of votes on the European continent, in Spain, in Germany, in other countries. You mentioned the idea of a natural right to life extension. How do you see those kinds of policies and legislations being enacted in your country or in the EU?
Like you mentioned, there were candidates for elections, especially there is a guy called, his name is Felix Wert, very active in Germany. And there was just an election at the state level in one state in Germany 2 or 3 days ago. and he managed to have 0.5% of the votes. That's not a lot yet, but it's going up. At the European level, you know that the legislation is still, let's say, very strict concerning the medical experiment. But there is progress that, for example, concerning the use of DNA and DNA studies, there is more and more people sharing knowledge concerning this. So it should be possible at the European level to have more research, and it should be possible also to share more information. There is also a global trend at the European level to consider, well, a global trend that's maybe a little bit too much, but there are more and more people at the European level also who think that we should share this knowledge concerning all new therapies, and this is also positive.
Very nice, very nice. And thinking also about your work and your work with the SENS Foundation. I'm very interested in speaking to Aubrey de Grey one day. There was a discussion. I interviewed for this companion piece also a man named Michael Rose, and one thing that he spoke about was some of the greater complexities of ending cell death and reversing the effects of aging more broadly. What do you think are some of the best approaches in the study of aging and in approaches to ultimately achieving a longevity escape velocity for the human race?
Yeah, maybe first for information, I'm a great admirer of Aubrey de Grey and the SENS Foundation, but I'm not directly involved, except that I'm a donor also. But I'm not working. Well, I met Aubrey many times, but I'm not working directly with him. Yes, so that's what I'm going to say is more my point of view than the point of view of Aubrey de Grey, I think. My point of view is the biggest hope is concerning gene therapy. But it's not for tomorrow. So we know many things concerning gene therapies, but we don't know yet about genes directly related to aging. Well, not enough genes directly related to aging. So we have to look more for this. So this is, for me, the biggest hope, let's say, in 5 to 10 or 15 years. At the moment, many people are busy with senolytics. So that's the big hype, I would say, using products to kill senescent cells and then to have a longer life for this. And but of course, to have medical progress, more research, you need more research, you need more investment, and you need also you could also use artificial intelligence. So this is concerning the tools to make more research. I have many hopes in the use of artificial intelligence.
Very nice, very nice. And here in the United States, there is a vigorous debate, sometimes around the role of regulation and deregulation in advancing life extension and similar public health goals. We have in the United States right to try legislation for some things. It's not as strong as perhaps it could be from a life extensionist point of view. What kind of legal guarantees would you like to see enacted for faster research in life extension?
Yeah, first, as far as I know, the right to try in the US is only the right to try for the companies, because if the drug company making experiment doesn't want somebody to try it, they are not obliged. But okay, this is an aside question. What I would like, especially at the level of the people who are very old at the moment, it's more possibility to really start experiments. So for well-informed people, well, because the people when they are very old, they hope to live longer is anyway very very slow. So if people, old people are well informed, that they are risk, but also that there is a hope to have these new therapies working for them. I think we should make it easier to start this research. That's one aspect. And a second very important aspect is the obligation for people making research to publish their results and to share it. This is very important. So many times when you have an experiment and it's not working, you never see the results. And so it is important to have the results when it is working and for cheap price and available to everybody. But it's also important to have the results when it's not working, because otherwise people will start the same experiment again for nothing. Sharing knowledge is very important. And well, this is, let's say, a political point of view, but for me, it's very important to have public money to ensure this.
Very nice. And your chapter mentions that every month more than 3 million people worldwide are dying from age-related diseases, and we want to see this reversed by any regulatory methods and other methods that we might be able to achieve. I'm reminded of a discussion that occurred here in the U.S. Transhumanist Party with during our second debate, and at that time, one candidate suggested that the United States, rather than having public funds for research into life extension of the SENS variety, a particular candidate mentioned that we should consider cryonics being publicly funded, and I was very reluctant to suggest this, because I would imagine that even though I support cryonics in the private sector and its advancement and use, I was a little bit concerned that maybe it would be a large amount of money that could be better spent in other areas. Are there any varying concerns for you as to how this research and the allocation of funds should be spent with the SENS approach to life extension?
Yeah, so I think like you that cryonics is for a very small group of people. Well, on one aspect is still quite expensive, but the other aspect is really there is a very, very small group of people who are using this, who are trying this. So, and now concerning how to use the money, I think, like I said, research concerning DNA, research concerning cell analytics, research concerning all aspects related to rejuvenation. I think it's also important not to go only in one direction, but to go to many directions. And yeah, if, let's say, if I had to decide yesterday, sorry, if I had to decide tomorrow, I would ask people like over the way, of course, but I would also ask people, researchers, well-known researchers in other areas.
Very nice, very nice. And your chapter also mentions the idea of life extension as a transnational movement, a world project. And how do you feel that should progress? Maybe in transnational terms, in terms of cooperation between countries, in terms of cooperation between institutions, but also as an inspiration to the human race. I think a major problem with people's thinking about this is that they don't know very much about life extension, so they're not very invested in these ideas. How do you think that we should fix these concerns?
Well, like I said at the beginning, I think that the people don't get at the moment that most deaths, not only in rich countries but everywhere in the world, that most deaths are related to aging. So very often people will say, yeah, but poor people, they still die because of hunger, and that's not anymore the case. So that always repeat that 70% of the deaths in the world and 90% in countries like the US or European countries. So die of diseases related to old age, and that is that we can avoid this if we have medical progress. This is the first aspect. Concerning the possibility to have an international project. So first, at the European level, you have already quite international activities at the level of health questions and other questions. And at the at the international level, it's also possible to imagine. We have international institutions like the UN, of course, like UNESCO. Yeah, so if there is a political will, it's possible. And one more aspect is, of course, to make it sure that there are no patents, or more precisely, that the intellectual rights related to intellectual property related to the discoveries, that nobody is going to say, well, it's only for rich people or only for the people who are able to pay for it. So to be very careful concerning the legal aspects. But for this, I'm, let's say, reasonably optimistic, because things concerning gene therapy, in most cases, there is a consideration that it's not possible to have patents, at least no patents directly related to new genes or to human genes, new human genes.
Very nice. And you mentioned a moment ago that some people try to change the conversation when you bring up concepts of super longevity. They might wish to talk with good reason about deaths from extreme poverty, lack of potable water, lack of access to nourishment, and concerns of this kind. But we do know that since the advent of the networked world, and since the late 20th century, those deaths from extreme poverty have dropped precipitously, gone down by something like 80% or more. And we still have a large number of people, pushing up to 1 billion people in that danger zone. But we can only expect that we are going to continue to see those numbers falling as we move into phenomena like you describe also in your chapter, Moore's law effects, and the advance of technology, and even more commonplace effects like not necessarily on this high trajectory of advancement.
Of course, if I can just say, of course, the fact that we have to fight against diseases related to old age doesn't mean that we have to stop the rest, like trying to stop malaria and so on. But in the other areas, the progress are fast. Concerning diseases related to old age, we don't progress very fast, really. and especially concerning the maximal lifespan, it's not going up. So it's really the last, let's say, medical question that we are not until now able to solve. The big,
And
the big medical question that we are not going to able to solve at the moment.
Yes, and I interviewed a few people on this subject of, of life extension becoming a part of government services through a public health service. And I'll mention one gentleman. His name is Florian Marcus. He's a German man, but he lives in Estonia, and he presented to our organization and also did a podcast with me. And he is an emissary from the Estonian government for e-governance. And he talked about a lot about their iVoting and other services that are provided through the government because of this. But one thing that was discussed in that conversation and some other recent conversations is that this high level of digitalization of services generally in a country like Estonia might now allow for the public health service to become digitalized, which could allow for oversight of citizens' health in a real-time way. It could allow for shifting the costs of the public health service from end-of-life care to preventative measures of the kind that you are very familiar with. Do you think that this is a realistic prospect that governments can begin to provide life extension instead of the kind of public health services that are provided on much of the European continent? Or in addition?
At the moment, there are no real possibilities to have life extension products. So this is more. So of course you could have you have already general things possible for better health, and the aspect of and digital aspects are important. But there is nothing really available for life extension. I mean, going up really longer maximal lifespan. So all the things were possible at the European level at the moment. It's more in the direction of research for me concerning life extension itself. And I know indeed in Estonia they are very well organized for all aspects concerning digital health, but also digital, I think, digital democracy, digital organization. Yes.
Yes, yes, it is an exciting prospect, and it's always difficult to talk about timelines for these things. Every country is different, and it's even within a country that is more advanced, it's hard to identify what interventions might be used the most, and how these things are going to affect the people there.
Yeah, but for me, the most important aspect at the moment is people realizing the fact that we could do it, and making this a priority, a global moonshot project once again. Yeah, and yeah, if we have progress, well, it would be for everybody, well, or at least for most citizens in the world.
Yes. Yes, and there's an awful lot that we could say about life extension from the point of view of these kind of public health services here in Arizona with the Arizona Transhumanist Party, my organization. The United States has in some ways a less comprehensive public health service than in your country and then in many other countries. It's true that the public health service is only fully accessible to some people, older people, in the form of the Social Security Administration and these kinds of things. We here at the Arizona Transhumanist Party, we support a more robust public health service. And also in my campaign for presidency, we support a more robust public health service. But we're also working on a more local initiative for health services accounts. And this is something that would allow people to be using some of public funds for a specific life extension interventions that they would not otherwise be earmarked for. Do you see differing strategies in your approach and in your country to things of this kind, alternate programs? We mentioned
Yeah.
a rather extreme case in cryonics, but are there any others that you see being worthy of discussion or advancement?
I mean, yeah, like you said, the situation is different in the US and in Europe. Well, in Europe, you have many different situations concerning the countries, but still in countries like my country, Belgium, France, Germany, the public health system is working well. Of course, not perfectly, but good. And in my opinion, it's more important to, let's say, protect and to reinforce this system than to have specific groups than helping specific groups. But of course, it's different. Can be different in the US. And yeah, in the US, you have also the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, the life expectancy, the global life expectancy is not rising anymore. And so this is, of course, problematic. Yes.
Yes, it's true. The United States life expectancy has dropped in recent decades. For men, it's dropped more precipitously, and
Yeah.
this is certainly tied to a lack of concern with developing a public health service in the
Yeah.
United States. There's many factors in this, but it's something that we hope to reverse. There are people in this organization, in fact, candidates running right now for the transhumanist party in presidential primary, who are against public funds for healthcare. They want to remove this sort of thing, and some of their arguments are that the private sector can do a better job. Some of their arguments are also that by removing this, we might make faster the pace of techno progress. Again, talking about this discussion of where we might regulate and where we might deregulate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is,
Tell me your feelings on this subject.
yeah, this is more, let's say, it's not only a question concerning transhumanism, but it's more a political question, let's say left-wing, right-wing question. Yeah, in my opinion, but it's not the opinion of all members of HILS, for example, but in my opinion, the public system with a part of private initiative, but the public systems are working better. It's the countries where people are living the longest lives are usually countries with a strong social security and health system, like Scandinavian countries, like France, Germany, and so on. But to be totally honest, you have also more liberal systems or more, let's say, privatized systems like in Hong Kong, who are working where people have also a longer life expectancy. Yeah.
So
We need at least a health system who is working, and in the future, if we imagine that we have, and once again, I think it's possible in 10, 15, 20 years of therapies for life extension, we need that this is available to everybody, or at least almost everybody, because, well, I would say for ethical reasons, but even for for even for rich people, if there was a situation with difference between rich people and and poor people, too big difference, there would be conflicts, and this would be bad for everybody, not only for poor people. If a society when there are when there is too much difference between rich and poor is a society who is worst for poor and for rich people.
Yes, and you mentioned that some nations or entities like Hong Kong that have a more privatized healthcare service to some degree, but still have public health outcomes. Many
Yes.
of these tending to be relatively small countries, in the size of a nation, of a city state almost, than a large sprawling nation state like the United States. I think that does maybe come to some of the problems here in the USA. We have a large country and a country that does not have a public health mandate at a national level, and many concerns of this kind. We see in the United States that we aren't doing the basic work of caring for our citizens, and so that they are able to reach an optimal lifespan relative to lifespans in the rest of the world. And it sometimes makes me wonder if I should leave the United States at some point as a life extensionist. I think that's an extreme example, of course. But do you have any other insights or musings on fixing things here for us a little bit in the U.S. so I don't have to do something desperate?
Yeah, well, the USA it's very strange country or even continent, because I mean, you have the best scientists in the world. You are one of the richest countries in the world, but people don't live shorter lives than in many in the richest, the other rich and countries with a good system. So it's really strange, and well, my opinion is if you had a system with more equality and also less opposition, it would work better. But okay, on the other side, yeah, I must admit that these best scientists of the world, they are still in your country.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, yeah, it's strange. It's strange, complicated to understand. Yeah, yes, and
It's
things can change also pretty fast, because yeah, maybe the next elections will change.
And I spoke to a gentleman also about his work in this context. A gentleman who has a lot of knowledge about the United States private sector research and development in life extension. His name is Ira Pastor, and it was interesting to talk to him because he's worked largely at the vanguard of this kind of research, and also very much worked in the private sector as opposed. And you mentioned that the United States has a lot of resources at its disposal, a lot of resources in the marketplace, and has some of the real cutting edge work that's being done in pharmaceuticals and so forth over the decades. Do you see that the United States can keep that strength going on in light of these other problems, like a decreasing lifespan and so forth? Do you think that maybe other countries in a more networked era, a more automated and AI-driven era, will replace us as a leader in pharmaceutical development?
I cannot.
Difficult crystal ball.
Yeah, sorry, I cannot answer about this. I don't know what's going. It's kind of the classical answer. It's very difficult to make prognosis. Yeah, especially concerning the future. It's a kind of a classical joke.
Mm.
I hope that at the European level there will be more research, more collective research. I think that at the European level, the fact that the legislation is very strict concerning health aspects, and that there are public data banks is going to help for better research. But if you don't have at the European level this kind of global understanding that we should work for longevity, and if companies like Google Calico or other companies in the US are working on longevity, well, it will go further in the US and less good in Europe, and the other way if Europe manage to have global projects. But at the end of the day, my first hope is we will have therapies. There will be people active in the US, in Europe, in China, and other places, and working together. Yeah, and I would say I don't care so much to which place, if it is possible to have the results for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. And in addition to all of your work with life extension, you have also written quite extensively on techno progress and the
Yes.
philosophy and specific initiatives for in techno progressive undertakings. Techno progressivism. Pardon me. Tell us a little bit about this side of yourself and your interest in techno-progressive undertakings.
Okay, so this is globally the question of so when you have technological progress, you can use it for more equality or for more inequality. Globally, if you take a look for the last 20, 30 or 40 years, probably it's working for more equality in many aspects, but not in all aspects. I'm old enough to remember when this thing, the mobile phones before smartphones, people used to say, yeah, but this would be only for rich people. No, it's for literally the majority of human beings in the world. But this is something that we have to work on this. It's not for certain then new technologies will be available for everybody. It's not certain that there are no it's not it's not certain that we will not have new technologies who are only for a small category of people, and we have to avoid this. That is one aspect. Another aspect, not only techno-progressist aspect, is the question related to risk, and so what some person like Nick Bostrom called existential risk. So how to avoid that that new technologies are destroying the world, let's say, and especially concerning developments of artificial intelligence who could be dangerous. But that's another question than since, well, that's not only techno-progressist ideas. This is in a few words.
Mm-hmm. And just last night, I was hosting a panel discussion or participating in a panel discussion that I helped organize about algorithm-run government and the prospects of this, and some concerns like those you mentioned come up in this conversation. People feel that governments having this kind of power could itself lead to existential risk. I think that existential risk will tend to come from a variety of areas. but you have some insights into governance as well. You are a specialist in Social Security and public pensions.
Yeah.
My platform, the Futurist New Deal, includes a specially funded basic income funded by the lease of federally owned lands, which are held in great number across the United States. And we can lease them to companies and create a middle class basic income of $52,000 a year. Now, we've mentioned a few times that every country is different. The United States has fallen behind in some areas around labor and health, and we need to make up some distance. But do you think that in your country, programs of this kind could be of value in the areas based on your expertise there?
Yeah, well, I think that the question concerning basic income is a very important one. Yeah, in European countries, but also in the US, one of the big questions is, of course, is technological progress going to lead us to a world where it's almost not necessary anymore to work? And if you have this situation, you have also a big risk of too big inequality, because between people having the machines, the artificial intelligence, and people having nothing. So yeah, this is very important to ensure basic income. That's the opinion of most people in the, at least in the transhumanist movement in Europe. I think also in the US. You mentioned the question of democracy. It's also quite complicated. One positive aspect about new technology is the fact that it's easier to have a more international democracy. It could be possible to even organize elections or decisions at the world level. But it's also quite easier to control people, to make dictatorial decisions, of course. So this is quite complicated and important question, how to keep democracy in a technological changing world. Yes.
Very nice, very nice. And I think that your approach and insights into policy on these issues, and your work on these issues, and across a broad spectrum of advocacy is very, very commendable. I think you are. I wish we had more people with your kind of style of advocacy in our organization. Our organization, there's people who I think have ideas that are almost anti-transhumanist. They don't have enough concern about the well-being of people and improving quality of life and health outcomes. They like to. Some of them like to change the discussion to science fiction ideas rather than focusing on near-term solutions. And yes, please.
I agree. I think, I would say near-term, short-term changes are also important, and more equality in terms of social aspects is important. And if we are not able to do it on the short term, people will not trust the transhumanist, also not for far future. So it is important indeed. But when you say, okay, the American world, and in my opinion, the American world and the European world are not so different. You know, there are also people against equality in Europe, and there are also people in favor of more equality in the US. And concerning the transhumanist movement, what we need is more people, more active people, and more enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and popular skepticism around ideas around austerity and public policies of this kind has changed quite a lot in the United States in
Yeah,
recent years. So we might hope that even though not all legislative avenues are easily open, unfortunately, because these special interests have changed many of these laws to favor themselves, but we still might hope that the United States is moving in a positive direction in
yeah.
in that way, maybe closer to the models that you've described. I remain hopeful. I remain hopeful about this, and I am very hopeful in speaking to you, Didier. Thank you for sharing these insights into your work, and it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful speaking with you. Do you have any other points that you'd like to make as it relates to improving life expectancy or the movement of life expectancy and social progress as you see it happening?
So first, thank you for organizing this, and
Mm,
then yeah, maybe many often when I make a last sentence, it's to say so. Today is probably the best day of the human history, but it's
mm.
also
Here.
probably one of the most dangerous days of human history.
Mm,
So we are, as transhumanists, but also as human beings, responsible to choose or to try to push for a respectful world, and a respectful world is a world where we can live longer and healthier lives, and this for all people who want it. Well, because of course these therapies will not be compulsory. We didn't speak about this, but yeah, for the
yeah.
people who want it. So even if they are not rich, but not if they don't want it. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm, yes, and I think of I like to use the term the de facto life extensionist. I think that maybe 98% of all people,
Yeah,
if given the opportunity through the public health service to have life extension interventions and so forth, they will accept it. So I think it's a small number of people who will resist this, and for different reasons.
yeah.
Um,
Yes, if I cannot, yeah, you're right. And also, people, once again, they don't get it that
mm,
aging is killing us, and they don't get it that it could be possible to have longer and healthier lives. Many
mm,
often they think, yeah, if we are going to live longer, we will be in bad health. But that's not the goal, and that's not what's going to happen.
mm.
Yeah, people
Bears
know
repeating.
when they
Mm,
are 70, they are in good health, and they used to be 70, very old and very frail, but now it's going better.
mm,
And if we can live for 130 years, it will be 100, well, the most of it will be in good health. That is something that people don't get.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yes. Well, thank you again, sir, for sharing these insights into your work, into this piece in the Transhumanist Handbook. And sir, you are among the best of us. I do believe in your worldview, in your work, in your research. All of these things, a paragon to transhumanists here and the world around. Thank you, Didier.
Thank you. Bye.